property owners, right?
Yes.
Since the tower no longer exists. And the other piece of it is a discussion of an ordinance of 546, which is an ordinance regarding the salary of the mayor and the town council members. We're considering increasing the salary of the mayor from $7,000 to $9,800 and from the town council to $3,000 to $4,000. This does not go into effect until the next council people and mayors are elected to their respective offices. The last time we raised salaries was 2006. So that's what we've got. Is there any discussion related to the public hearing for ordinances 545 and 546? Yes, Marlene?
May I stand here, or do I have to go up there?
I think you're fine there.
Okay. I have a few comments regarding ordinance 546, the proposed ordinance, and I'm going to read this, because if I don't, I will just ramble on and on and on, and that never ends well. And I promise I won't cry.
I have tissues in my pocket.
I don't.
I have history. I'd like to just share a brief anecdote. When I was first elected to the council in 2009, my neighbor came over and asked me, so what's a job like that pay? Like about $36,000? And I said, well, not quite. And he was shocked to learn that council members were only paid $3,000 a year. Well, I am in no way suggesting that council members be paid $36,000 a year. I would ask that serious consideration be given to increasing the proposed salary adjustment from $4,000 to $5,000 yearly. When we consider the ramifications of council members' decisions and the effect these decisions have on the operation of the town and its residents, whether these decisions concern noise regulations, pets, parking, business operations, housing developments, what Main Street looks like, eminent domain, and numerous other factors, we should consider paying council members an amount commensurate with their responsibilities. The entire code of the town of Hampstead is the result of conscientious and carefully researched work by members of the town staff and the town council over the years. Council members also have oversight assignments that require they spend countless personal hours attending numerous meetings and civic events, and based on personal experience, often have residents approach them with inquiries or complaints at the grocery store, at the library, or right at their front door. And that doesn't even count the barrage of social media contacts. Council members also have developed and completed community projects on their own initiative. Since Ordinance 546 was introduced in December, $20,000 obviously had to have been allotted in the budget for future council salaries. While I like to think of budget numbers as suggestions, I am aware that there is always some flexibility with line item allocations, and I can only hope that this $20,000 can be increased to $25,000 yearly to fund future council member salaries. While $5,000 yearly does not begin to compensate council members for the scope of their responsibilities, the town will still continue to get its money's worth from these dedicated citizens. As a resident who sincerely appreciates the council members' dedication and commitment to the excellence of Hampstead as a place to live and do business, I respectfully ask for your consideration of this request. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marlene. I
Thank
think it's
you.
only, if we bump them 1,000, it's only 5,000, because there's only 5 of them.
I understand.
The other money's already in the budget. All right, any other comments? Going once?
Be willing to take a question.
Sure.
What would you say is the average amount of time you spend in a year working on, town council issues? The point that I'm trying to make is that if you're only earning $3,000, you're probably earning well below minimum wage for a position like this. And I think it's hard for people to put that into perspective when, if you're talking about, 20, 30, 40 hours a month, far below minimum wage. So I was just curious as to how much you actually think you spend.
So when we first got elected, council members were getting paid $500. And I did the math with the number of people we had in town, and I was getting paid 27 cents per citizen a year. And so sometimes when people come up to me and they were giving me a hard time, I'd just say, I'm sorry, your 27 cents is up. Move on.
I've done both jobs. The only one sitting up here, and I would say everybody up here does varying hours of work for the town, and the year is not linear. It's up, down, based upon what's going on. And based on their responsibilities, like planning and zoning, Deb has an extra meeting a month, plus everything that's going on with planning and development in the town of Hampstead. I will tell you, the mayor, on the other hand, it's probably about 5 times the amount of work, because, pretty much everything comes through my door at some point, and then goes off to either these people or to the chief or to, especially Tammy, and the staff. So, but it's not something we're doing to get rich, obviously. If we were consultants, we'd be an engineer. And not that they're making the big bucks helping us out, but, I think it's also fair to compensate people a little bit for the time that's involved. Plus, as you'll learn shortly, the types of decisions that, how they impact everyday life around here in Hampstead, they do have impact. Any more comment, questions? Somebody's calling in, Doug, with a comment. All right, with that being done, we'll close the public hearing and we'll get on to the regular order of the council meeting. Please rise for the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. We submit ourselves to you as your servants and the servants of the people of Hampstead who've placed their trust in us, dear Lord. Please allow every word that is spoken and every action taken to be in the best interest of Hampstead, and for everyone gathered here tonight to be a stabilizing influence in these unsettled times. O Lord, bless this meeting and our town. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was cute.
Good job out there. I heard those Cub Scouts loud and clear. Roll.
Mayor Nevin,
Here.
Councilwoman Barrett is absent. Councilwoman Painter,
Here.
Councilman Thomas,
Here.
Councilman Unglesby,
Here.
Councilman Zolman.
Here. Thank you. So minute approvals for the council meeting on December 13th.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, approved. So for the benefit of those at home, we've got the Boy Scout Troop 9 here. So they're working on their citizenship and the community badge. And then we have the Cub Scout Pack 791, who are also part of our voices at the Christmas tree lighting ceremony that we have every year. And so they're here as the arrows of light, right? I got all that covered. So it's good to see you. And like I said, pay attention because I will call on you later. You got to earn those badges. So, Tammy, Town Manager's Staff Report.
The third annual Candy Cane Lane on Main decorating contest was the most successful at drawing attention to our main street this year. The posts on Facebook were seen by over 30,000 people, and over 2,500 people responded to vote for their favorite decorations. In the business division, first place was awarded to a small town boutique, with second place going to Hampstead Auto Parts. In the residential contest, the Green family at 831 South Main Street came in first, with Terry Detamore, did I say it? At 919 South Main finishing second. We will be providing the winners with gift cards to Hampstead businesses this week. So thanks to everyone who decorated this year. The displays were wonderful and very festive. The Passport program was also a success. 20 winners were randomly chosen on December 16th for $50 gift cards each, good at any Passport business. A quarter of the winners were town residents that shopped and dined at Hampstead businesses. And I think they're going to tally more information from the program too, from the passports that were turned in. Our commercial and residential projects continue to move forward. We are currently working on several different site plans and business prospects. Dollar General is in the process of constructing the new Hampstead store. Dunkin' Donuts is renovating their store and drive-through operations. The plan includes adding a second drive-through lane. The two lanes will merge at the ordering board, or right before the ordering board, which will be relocated to the rear of the building. The new configuration should allow a stacking of 5 additional cars for a total of 17, so hopefully getting the traffic off of Main Street. For the Finance Department, Cheryl's validating 2022 W-2s with Paylocity, as well as completing miscellaneous payroll year-end task. She'll be working with Edmunds to prepare the 2022 1099s through the new financial suite. Bids were open on Thursday, December 15th for the cleaning and repainting of the interior and exterior of the North Water Tower. The contract award for this bid's on the agenda for approval. A pre-construction meeting will be scheduled soon, and the anticipated start date of the work will be in March of 2023. 3 turf mowing bids will be released on February 13th for the 2023 through 2025 mowing seasons. The closing date will be March 7th for the submission of bids. A mandatory pre-bid meeting will be held on February 23rd. Everybody get their water bills? Looking okay?
Did, and I'm so glad you reminded us about the account number.
Yes. So water bills for this quarter were generated from a new software. Issues with our data conversion was being corrected up until the last minute. So over 2,000 bills were sent, and the only billing errors that we've discovered was 6 inactive accounts were billed the minimum amount. Those customers have been contacted and a charge will be credited. So far, customers that have paid online through our website have been entering their new account number for payment. However, there's several customers still need to update their account information on their online bill pay through their bank. But thank you to Christina for all her efforts, especially for her great technical skills. She worked a lot of stuff out on her own. Town staff and our consultants have had several more meetings to discuss possible PFAS removal projects. A presentation, as you can tell, is scheduled during this meeting to discuss the updates of recommended water system improvements and possible MDE funding opportunities. The welcome signs. At the end of this week, Strickler's Mason is scheduled to install the stone and brick base with a tentative completion of the signs installation by January 19th, weather permitting. Last week, town staff attended the first Hampstead Day stakeholders meeting for this year's event. Past Councilman Joe Renahan is co-chairing this event this year, and it'll be held on Saturday, May 20th.
Dave's still involved, though, right?
Yes, he is. So he's co-chairing with Dave Keeple. The new personnel policy has been distributed to all town staff with a receipt for signature. Judy has started the process for the May 9th, 2023 elections, when 2 council positions and 1 mayor position will be elected. The Town of Hampstead election news article will be published in the February 9th and February 16th publications of the Northern News.
The town election's May 9th. I'm up, Deb's up, Dave's up. All right. Oversights. Wayne, I think you're subbing in for Diane as well.
Yes, sir. For the Hampstead Farmers Market, the Hampstead Farmers Market Advisory Team met last night, January 9th, to begin planning the 2023 season. Opening day will be Saturday, June 3rd. Because of the way the calendar falls, the market will be open for 18 Saturdays this year, ending on September 30th. The vendor fee for the season will be $170. This is an increase. This equates to $10 for the 17 Saturdays and 1 free Saturday. For vendors who need additional space, the surcharge this season remains at $35 for each expansion. The daily fee for vendors who will only be participating for a small number of days is $45. Musicians are lined up for 12 of the 18 dates, so there's an opportunity for local musicians to fill the remaining 6 dates and get some public exposure. Please message Facebook page and send email via the link on our website if you're interested. And that's the report for the farmers market.
On the Farmers Market website.
Correct. Thank you. For the train station, we're still working on the website update and still booking bands for this year's events. Tree Commission, the meeting, we're having a meeting next week, weather and illness permitting, to plan our spring planting, which is going to be at Westwood Park. That's all I have.
Very good. Deb?
The Planning and Zoning Commission met on Wednesday, December 28th. Yes. And there was an approval of a post sign and a window sign for Fika, is that correct? Fika Coffee Bar at 1005 South Main Street. The post sign will be mounted to the existing pole that's already there. And that was it. So we're excited for a new little business with coffee bar and I think they've said pastries and such.
Very good. Dave?
Okay, how you doing? War Memorial Park, the bronze plaque was actually put on the War Memorial sign, on the side of it by Stickler Signs on January 6th. Got a copy of it up here, which I'll pass around. Just want to read it real quick. It says, War Memorial Park, made possible through the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, Community Parks and Playgrounds, Program Open Space, and the Town of Hampstead.
Cool.
So I thought that looked really nice. That officially, the War Memorial Park upgrades that were slated for this project, open space and community parks and playgrounds, have been fully funded and completed. So it was a long process, but we're very happy with how it turned out, and that's what we got for that. As far as the gardens at Richard Cemetery, the Rose Society of Maryland has donated an additional 16 rose bushes that were cuttings from the 1800s, and they've actually already planted them up there during the winter months. It's best for it to be done while it's dormant. And also had some volunteers help remove some of the dead plantings that were up there from this past season, and we sowed a bunch of wildflower seeds that we'll be planting and will be coming up in the spring. Final thing, on the MML front, I attended the Conference Planning Committee meeting. We had Zoom last week. We voted on classes and different instructional things we'll be doing at the summer conference. And we talked about how to engage participants and possible a mentor program where a elected official that's been around can take a new person in and show them the ropes, and also show them around the MML and how to get in the on the program down there. So
Cool.
That's a great idea.
Got an economic update included in that thing?
yes, there is.
Okay, good.
Really good one.
Ben?
Okay, the rainfall total for December last year was 4.75 inches, and the water usage was 330,000 gallons per day. The rainfall total so far for January is 0.56 inches, and the water usage so far is 328,000 gallons per day. And then just as a note from Kevin, is the total gallons of water pumped for 2022 was 124,721,000 on average of, which was an average of 342,000 gallons per day, compared to the previous year of 2021 of 123,002,000 gallons, which was an average of 337 gallons per day. So it went up about 5,000 gallons per day. That's all I have.
Good context for what's coming later on. Chief?
Good evening.
There we go, we're on. For the month of December, with reference to traffic safety, we investigated 6 reportable accidents, 7 minor property damage only, and 5 of the crashes took place at the 482 traffic circle. Speed signs were deployed at 3 locations. The primary focus during that time period was in the school area for 29 days of display. Traffic enforcement included 33 selective enforcements over an 18-and-a-half-hour period. During that activity, 14 citations, 13 warnings were issued, and 1 DUI arrest took place. Overall, traffic enforcement included 97 citations and 100 warnings. We conducted 539 property checks of both businesses and schools. Serious crime included 5 thefts, 4 DUIs, 6 assaults of the second degree. Arrests included 4 adults taken into custody for DUI. 10 adults were charged with various traffic offenses, 5 adults for second-degree assaults, and 1 adult for a theft. Training included 100.5 hours of various topics. First one on there, Cortico course. I'm going to come back to that in a second so you have an understanding of what it involved. We conducted TASER initial training. There's 2 types of TASER training that takes place. There is the basic course that gets you certified, and then our people are recertified every year. The recertification process isn't nearly as long as the actual intro course. We had an officer that was certified as an ASP instructor. What the ASP is, it's the portable baton that we carry. And what we typically try to do is every piece of equipment that we have that our officers use, we have somebody that's trained as an instructor, either by the state or by the manufacturer of that product, so our people are kept up to date. We had training on communication skills. An officer went through an intoximeter operator course. And as I mentioned before, we had the TASER recertification for the folks that still needed the yearly recertification to take place. We sent 2 officers through Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training. They refer to that as ALERT. That was hosted by the community college. It's a hands-on active shooter course. There is what are called simulations as close to the real thing as possible. 2 of our officers went through that training. To go back to the Cortico course, 2 people I want to mention before I get too involved in it. Sam Geiger on our end and Judy, who's here somewhere, right back there. A load of work went into this. What this is it's a wellness resource for our cops. It is something that's carried on their department-issued cell phone. Everything we have now is an app. Technology would try to take advantage of it as much as possible. It has changed dramatically in the profession over the years. When I started, I always like to use the analogy. Our guys go to calls now, the GPS comes up on the screen and it tells them exactly where to go. I learned in the MAP system, which is a lot different than what we have now. Everybody does everything with an app. Our policies and procedures are all on an app that they press a button on their phone, so it's there. They don't carry a book anymore. A lot of our Hampstead-specific programs we have are all available on their app. They have the ability to review recordings that they've made in the field on their body cameras on an app that they carry on their phone. This latest app that they have, Cortico is a wellness app. The job, the profession has a lot of stress, a lot of things that are difficult, and historically as a profession we haven't necessarily dealt with it as best as we should. Cortico is a company that provides those resources to our guys. It is not only for our officers, it's for their families as well. So if an officer has a problem with how he's eating, how he's sleeping, if his significant other, his or her significant other doesn't understand why they come home and they're grumpy after a particular type of call, this resource helps explain to them why folks are behaving the way that they do. It also gives our folks an access to instant help if they need it, someone to talk to, counseling, any kind of resource that would help them through a difficult time. I think it's a good thing, and as I said before, Sam and Judy put a lot of work into this. At one point, Sam had to learn and become designated as a Microsoft app designer to even get this thing up and running. There's a lot of work went into it, and I can't say enough about my appreciation for the way these guys made it happen. With reference to community events, Lieutenant Catherine's Craws, as we always do, we had a visit from another 5-year-old friend of ours. One of the things that we do, and I think it's a good thing, is we interact with anybody that would like to interact with the police department. So as crazy as it sounds, we've had different, typically moms, sometimes dads will reach out to us and they have a kid who is interested in the police, likes the police, and we will make time for them to come by and see at least a little bit of the police department. And as the last entry in there, and I covered it last meeting with reference to the Shop with a Cop program, the mayor, Santa, Councilman Oglesby, everybody that participated in that, it's hard to express how much work goes into actually making that event happen every year. Everything from the folks out there in the community, the people that sit in here, people that sit up here. There's too many people for me to thank, but I think it reflects well on the kindness of the town and the way they think about how they can help people that just maybe need a little bit of help during the holidays. So that's all I have. That's my report.
Thanks. Questions for the chief?
Sir?
Okay, thank you. Jason, to your question, so not all of it's drudgery, some of it's fun. So my comments, for the Boy Scouts and the Cub Scouts out there, you all know what a part-time job is, right? And a full-time job. So keep in mind, all the elected officials up here have other full-time jobs, and this is what we do for fun. Because we don't play enough golf or have enough grandchildren or whatever the case may be. Pickleball.
Have a life.
So, but at any rate, in my real job, I went to an economic outlook on last Friday with the Maryland bankers, because that's what I do for my real job. And I thought I'd give you my summation of the event. In a word, I would say the best word to describe it to the economy is uncertainty. You had 5 well-regarded economists sitting up there on a panel, and 3 of them thought we were going to be in a recession at some point this year. All 3 thought it would be one guy thought it would be drastic. 2 of them thought it'd be shallow. A 4th one thought it would be a coin flip, and the 5th one was out in, well, he's either right or he's extremely wrong. He thought that the inflation would be down under 3% by Memorial Day. So nobody else thought that. And his definition of what a recession is was also pretty interesting. But, since, for the adults out there, there's been some discussion about what the definition is, which is, typically in history been 2 negative quarters of GDP growth. So we'll see what happens, but what we know right now is that the labor market's really strong. Everybody has jobs. For every job opening out there, 1.8 people could fill those jobs. So there's way more people, there's way more jobs than there are people, right? 1.8 jobs for every person out there. So that's helping forestall any inflation, but at the same time, we're racking up huge consumer debt on our credit cards. Saving rates are low. How much longer? Because we're a consumer-driven society, how much longer can this continue? So most of them saw something happening in the second quarter of this year. How deep remains to be seen. But it was interesting that 5 guys were there, and everybody had their own little spin on it. And I've been attending this thing for a number of years, and I've never seen that happen. Here, 5 people can't agree on that. Would normally 3 of the 5 would easily agree. What's this mean to Hampstead? Right now, we all just got reassessed in this section of the county, and everybody saw their property assessment went up, and that's because over the last 3 years, the real estate market has been white hot. Right, you couldn't find a house if one went for sale. There were multiple bidders for it. Well, that with the Fed increasing their interest rates, that's turned on a dime overnight. Right now, houses are sitting on the market; they're not going for sale. People are staying in their houses because 30-year mortgages have gone to 6%, where they were at 3% just 8 months ago. So, if you're selling your house, you got to be able to afford the new higher mortgage rate on top of everything else. So, for the short term, that's good for us because part of our budget is made up of real estate taxes. The other piece of it is, I said everybody's got a job, right? And all those people last year, I think 30% of the people switched jobs. It's an amazing number of people switched jobs. And I was looking at just incidentally my own family, and 3 son-in-law and 2 kids changed jobs, and they all went not for lower wages but for higher wages. So jobs mean wages, which means income, and part of our income that we get is a slice of what you send to Maryland down to Annapolis, and your moms and dads out there, when you pay taxes, we get a piece of that. So that's good for us in the short term as well. What's kicking us though is inflation, just like you. Is up. Everything here costs more money, as we'll hear in a minute. And the regulatory burden, which we'll hear in a minute, is driving costs that we never thought we'd have to incur. So, it's a challenging time, but we'll weather it. We've always weathered it, but we're, as a town government, we're just a reflection of the overall economy, and what you feel at home, the town government feels as well. So that's my economic update. The other piece of it is politics starts full-time tomorrow in Maryland. The Maryland General Assembly kicks off, and for the first time in my memory, all the constitutional officers, the governor, lieutenant governor, controller, and the attorney general, all new. What we're going to get, I have an idea, but it's going to maybe take them a session or half a session to get geared into what they want to do. So we'll see what happens. The governor's still filling out his cabinet secretaries, it'll start full swing tomorrow. As a result of that, Maryland Municipal League is having a reception with some of the legislators tomorrow night. We have a board meeting, or I have an executive committee meeting tomorrow. There's a legislative committee meeting to talk about how we're going to respond to various pieces of legislation that have been proposed. So it'll make an interesting 90-day period of time here. So stay tuned. All right, so those are my comments. Under new business, we have the award of a contract for portable water storage tank rehab, which is the North End Water Tower, which is now 21 years old. And we've paid off the bond, and then now we got to repaint and recondition the thing because water's, hard on equipment. And it's amazing. We got 5 bids. The low was $319,700, $320 rounded, and the high bid was $670,000. So with the range in between, like you can't believe, I've never seen it this wide. So at any rate, the low bidder is known to our consultant and apparently known to us and passed our background test. So I would entertain a motion to accept Manoa Inc. and their bid of $319,700 for the rehab of the water storage tank at the north end of town.
So moved.
We'll let Ben second. There we go.
Water,
Any discussion of the bid? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thanks. All right. Do we want to do the ordinances and resolutions before we turn you loose? Okay. We'll skip over Larry and do the ordinances and resolutions. The first one is 545. These were the subject of the public hearings earlier today. An ordinance to authorize the permanent abandonment of real property, which is the previous water tower up by the fire department.
So moved.
Second.
And any discussion of that?
Roll call.
You got to catch up. Roll call.
Hold on, coming.
She's making
Okay.
notes. We're one of the only governments that gets ahead of their recording secretary.
Councilwoman, now I can't speak. Councilwoman Painter,
Yes.
Councilman Thomas,
Yes.
Councilman Unglesby,
Yes.
and Councilman Zolam.
Yes.
Zolman, I'm sorry.
Okay, that ordinance is passed. Then adoption of ordinance 546, which is the ordinance regarding the mayor's salary and the members of the town council, which will take effect for the next people sitting in these respective seats, or after the next election for the people sitting in these respective seats.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Yep.
Ms. Duff, I appreciate your comments. I understand what you're saying, believe me. 30 years sitting up here, I know what you're talking about. We've had discussions between the mayor and council members about what would be appropriate, what wouldn't be appropriate. And like the mayor said, this is not a job that you take to get rich or even to make money. By the time you pay for everything you've got to pay for and do all the work you've got to do and everything else, if you don't love it, it's a labor of love. You have to love it because you're not going to get rich doing it. And I appreciate your comments, but we kind of kicked this around, and the mayor tell you that I beat on him pretty hard. So I think we're going to go with what we have right now and see what the future brings. But thank you so much for your comments. I really appreciate this.
Well, you're more than welcome, but with all due respect to, I talked to him about this earlier, and he said it was okay to mention it. But with all due respect to the farmer's market manager, I don't see where his job is any more important than the council member's job. And he gets $5,000 a year.
Really?
Maybe you ought to read your budget in a little more detail.
So, with that being said,
So, I'm not, believe me, I know what he does, and it's an immense amount of work, but it's concentrated in 3 months. Whereas you all are doing it all year, day and night, many meetings. There's just to me, a little bit of inequity. That's all. That was one of the reasons and the market manager was totally in agreement. He says, I shouldn't be paid more than that, so.
Well, we'll cut his salary.
I knew you were gonna say that.
I knew he was being paid, but I thought it was in the range of $3,000, not $5,000. Maybe we should reconsider, Mayor.
Let's start all this up. Forget I said anything.
Thank you for the comments. Motion's been made and seconded. Don't hear any amendments. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Thanks, Marlene, for the comments. Appreciate it. Jason, you too. All right, now, we have a update on the water system and their water system improvements from HDR Engineering and Larry Hentz, who used to be a town councilman here, for those who don't know, and for the Boy Scouts and the Cub Scouts out there. So we're going to talk about numbers, and we're looking at a regulation is something that the government above us, the state and the federal guys in Annapolis and DC, tell us we have to adhere to. And that we're only allowed to have certain limits of various particles and chemicals in our water system. And over the years that I've been involved, that, the parts per thousand, which is 3 zeros, right? We've gone to parts per million, which is 6 zeros, to parts per billion, which is 9 zeros, to now parts per trillion, which is 12 zeros. So a 1 followed by 12 zeros. Think about how big that number is. And that's what we're trying to get our arms around. You can, maybe these numbers, I'm sure, just are numbers to you, but they're very, when you're talking about a part per trillion, it's a very minuscule amount, beyond minuscule. You can't fathom how little it is. And over time, regulations are what they are. I think we've lost a little balance here because our water system is safe, but they're making us operate our system to a level which we've never seen before. And that, in order to do that, that's going to require the way we change the way we operate. And so this is a presentation about how we go about meeting these demands and changing the way we operate. So, Mr. Hentz, all you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to update you on some of the work that we've talked about before and where we're headed in near term and in long term. You think the economy is uncertain, the regulatory environment is very uncertain. And I'm going to try to give some context for that right now. And you have to make some decisions in this, regardless of the uncertainty. You have to make your best judgment as to where you think you need to go. So I'm going to concentrate on PFAS, the polyfluoroalkyl substances. And as you recall from our last meeting, in June of 2022, this year, EPA released an updated lifetime health advisory limit for the PFAS, for 4 PFAS chemicals. And the lifetime health advisories are based on a health risk assessment based on scientific etymological work. So they established PFOA as 0.004 part per trillion, so that's another 3 zeros, Mayor, on top of the 12. 0.02 for PFAS, which is a sulfur-based PFAS. Gen X and PFBS are another class of compounds that they issued a little higher limits. But as I said the last time, there are 40,000 PFAS chemicals that we know of, and there are probably more that we don't know of. They're called forever compounds because they're not biologically degraded very easily, and they are mobile. They move through the environment pretty easily. A lot of them do, not all of them. So there's likely, as the science and the risk assessment, the health risk assessment develops, there's liable to be a continual chain of regulations coming out from EPA along these lines. All of these lifetime health advisories are below the analytical. We can't even measure these. We don't even have the equipment to measure them. Their risk assessment says that concentration will create a health impact. They kind of go backwards. They use the health impact science, and they go backwards to how many gallons of water a human being drinks a day, and how it's communicated through the environment, and et cetera, et cetera. Then they arrive at a concentration. That's how those are set. But we can't even measure them. So there is a lot of speculation as to what the actual concentration that will be limited in drinking water will be. But I think the industry as a whole is coming to a consensus that it's going to be likely between 2 and 4 parts per trillion, somewhere in that part, because we can measure that. You can't regulate something you can't measure. So you measure something, you regulate to a level you can reliably measure. So that's what the industry is thinking right now. EPA was supposed to issue their regulations, their proposed regulations, according to their roadmap to their PFAS strategic roadmap They issued this in 2021, and they said that on the right side in the blue bold letters, that they were expecting to issue the regulations the fall of 2022. Well, it's January 2023, no regulation. They have not been issued, and they've been very secretive about it. They're getting ready for pushback. Public is going to start to push back when they see the cost implications of this. So they're getting their ducks in a row so that they can stand in front of the public and the press
And a judge.
and everybody else and say why they're doing what they want to do. So that's delaying their time, but they're notoriously late on their schedule. So this is not something new. So there is going to be, we believe there's going to be community and utility pushback because of the extent and the degree of the cost impacts, which I'll lay out for you here shortly. And this creates some uncertainty on when exactly the regulations are going to be issued, what's going to be in the regulations. And those regulations are typically hundreds of pages long. And we expect that to be here. So they're dotting i's and crossing t's right now. We do know that the draft is in the OMB office. They have to do they've done the risk assessment, now they have to do a cost impact assessment. And they're always wrong with the cost impact assessment. But they have to do it by law anyway. So the country as a whole this momentum has been building for years. And some of the states have lost some patience with EPA, and they've gone out with their own set of state regulations. Maryland's not one of them, thank goodness, right now. But you can see some of the little more liberal states have already gone down into the 5 territory, the 8. California, Connecticut, 10. These are parts per trillions. So they're already. If the EPA doesn't move, some of these states are going to move, and Maryland will eventually get there, but I think EPA will probably beat them. And the National Drinking Water Utility, it's called the AWWA, it's the American Water Works Association. It consists of utilities all over the country that come together and discuss issues that face the drinking water industry. They're speculating that this is the 6 of the types of regulations they'll be looking at. Either each of the PFOS or the PFO will be at 4, or the combination of PFOS and PFO will be 4 total, or just a long chain subsection of that because they're the more hazardous ones, or it might be 10. So they went through some analysis of what this cost impact would be to a generic utility of different sizes. But the long and the short of it is, if any of the 4 parts per trillion options become the actual regulation, 10 of the 17 town wells would not pass. They would need some kind of treatment. We know that it would be granular activated carbon would be the treatment technology. So as we talked about the last time, our plan to deal with this is that we were going to build 4 well houses. We have many wells, and we want to group them into 4 centralized treatment processes, because putting in carbon is an expensive process, and putting them in each well is going to be much more expensive than centralizing the wells and treating them at the centralized well houses. So there would be, on the north side of town, there would be 2 well houses, one up the North Carroll Farms. We would treat 4 wells. They would treat with granular activated carbon, chlorine, and pH control. And then another well house at what we're calling the dairy wells, which is right behind the car wash. And it would treat 4 wells. And that would include the granular activated carbon, chlorine, pH control, and ion exchange, IX, for nitrate control. You have high nitrates in those wells. So that will have an additional treatment process. Where the wells near the fire station will be turned off. They have been turned off. They will not be brought online at all. We have advanced the North Carroll Farms. We advanced the design, and we've got preliminary design on the dairy wells as well. This is kind of you can see The darker shaded is the addition to the well house. This is where we're kind of estimating our costs that's gonna impact to the town.
Kevin, when did we build that thing? How many years ago?
We cut the ribbon in 2017.
Really? The super pump, the biggie? Okay. And we've already outgrown it with this.
And then on the south side, the two well houses would be over on the Shiloh, we're calling the Shiloh well house, which would treat the left side of the graphic there. Four wells would go into that one. And then Roberts Field, there would be, I think there's 5 wells down there that would go into that one. Similar with granular activated carbon, chlorine, and pH control. We have done some extensive testing of the wells, more than what MDE required us to do. And based on that, we think that we can optimize this if the regulation comes in around 4 or higher. Then we think we can eliminate 2 of the well houses down on the south side. The Roberts Fields wells would not require treatment except for well 13, up near that question mark. That one will require, it's the best producing well in the Roberts Field zone. It would need granular activated carbon. So well 13 would have GAC, chlorine, and pH control. For wells 31 and 32 on the left side of the graphic, the combined water quality for those two, when they add them together, would be under 4. So right now, if it's going to be 4 is going to be our limit, then we would just use dilution for that, and no GAC. And then for the other wells, we'll just have to wait and see. 28 and 29 up at the north, the top of the graphic to the left, top side. That one would require treatment, but we don't need it for the growth rate now. We have enough capacity in this scheme to deal with immediate growth. If you get more growth than you have planned now, we may have to bring 28 and 29 and treat that. They would not pass the 4 standard. So we're going to wait to see what the regulation actually brings, what growth brings, et cetera. The problem is that we now have an opportunity to apply for a grant from MDE. They have 7 buckets of money that they fund every year. And the top 3 are basically wastewater oriented. Bay program, wastewater, septic systems, et cetera, et cetera. The highlighted ones are for drinking water. These are kind of new, and they've been funded by the infrastructure bill and the SRF money, a state revolving loan fund. So we don't know what the regulation is. We don't know exactly the impact that it's what we're gonna have to do, but we have a guess. But we have to apply for money by the end of this month. Now, we think, well, before I go there, the town has been very proactive, as you know, looking and investigating the PFAS issue within the town. Its occurrence, we've got probably a lot more data than a lot of utilities in the state right now. We've analyzed its potential impacts to the town and possible solutions. The competition for this year's funds is going to be light because we're out in the front of the rest of the utilities in the state. So your best opportunity to get the funds for PFAS removal is this year. Next year, when they come out for this, you're going to have a lot more competition. A lot more people are going to be, doing what we've done for the last 6 months. They'll be doing this year sometime. So the application that we'll be putting in is judged on the issue to be resolved, the severity of its impacts to the town, the state of readiness for the community to move forward. They don't want to fund something that's pie in the sky. They want something concrete, defined, with a cost estimate that says you're ready to go to the next phase, which would be final design and construction. The community affordability and a disadvantaged community status. You guys are middle class in the state of Maryland. You're right in the middle on the MHI, medium household income. So you're not going to score well in those two categories. But there are other water management benefits that they also score on, which the consolidation of the multiple inputs to the distribution system is another benefit to the town and to the state. So we're going to play that up. So we think we're going to have, good scores, relatively good scores on the issue, on our solution, on the impact of the town, and the readiness, we're going to be ready, and the other water management benefits.
Do we know how much total money's in the pot?
No, we don't. We're meeting with MDE tomorrow. That's one of the questions we're going to ask. They have 7 pots. Other states have published what are in those 7 pots. To our knowledge, they have not published it in Maryland. We're going to be applying for 1 or maybe 2 pots, and both related to PFAS. So the application will be scored according to what we submit. The key here is the town must commit to it, to the solution and to the funding, if the funding is accepted. If they propose something to you, which will happen spring, summer this year, to be finally approved next spring of '24, it has to go through the Public Works as the last point of approval. Then you have to promise to do this. You just can't, do it and say and walk away. At some point, you'll get this one final chance to say, this is our first volley. Let's call it a negotiation. This is our first volley of the negotiation. Here's our offer. They'll come back with something. No, some, little, big, loan, grant. They'll come back with something. Then you'll have an opportunity to think that over, mull it over, and then you have to commit to it at that point. Legally binding. Our proposed solution involves 16 to 17 million in capital costs. This is a big number for the town of Hampstead. It also includes $150,000 to $200,000 a year in increased operation and maintenance costs.
Was that for all 4 pumps or just the 2 north?
Just the 2. Well, the 3.
The 3.
Three,
The Shiloh run and the 2 north.
13, right. The costs are added to the current budget. They're above and beyond what you have now. They're very soft at design. We're at a conceptual level of design. There's all kinds of issues that make it soft. First of all, we're at conceptual level. And engineering, we use cost estimating terminology, which is AACE is the American Association of Cost Estimators. They have guidelines and rules. And most of our costs right now are based on parameters such as dollars per square foot or dollars per linear foot of pipe or dollars per pound of steel, that kind of stuff. They're not, we don't have a complete design in order to do a complete cost estimate. We all have it, we're there in $2022. We don't have any inflation in this right now. Tell me what the inflation number, I'll plug it in.
2 to 8.
We've used normal engineering estimates. We have not plugged in the cost burden that MDE puts on you. When you get money from them, they put strings with it. You have to have Davis Bacon wages in your construction contract. You have to have disadvantaged business enterprise monies and good faith efforts. You have to have accounting systems for how you keep track of the money. We haven't included any of that burden in here. And
It's the last line.
it says costs do not include external funding or financing costs. So if they give you partial money and you have to foot a bond, I don't have the cost for the bond in there at this time. So I just want to give you the context for this dollar assessment.
Any cost for bonding, the actual cost of getting a bond done is inconsequential to the amount of the bond.
Yeah. But it's all additive. All these things, they're little, but they add up to
Some of them are
something
little.
substantial. So the next steps, we're meeting with MDE tomorrow. We're working diligently to prepare the MDE funding application. We're preparing the technical memos that go in to support the proposed solution. It provides the justification for that. Depending on what we hear from MDE, we may want to come back to you like the 23rd, week of the 23rd, tomorrow. If what we hear from them tomorrow, we may come back to you, or if you have other questions. We're going to submit the application by January the 30th, and then we'll continue to develop the preliminary engineering design through HDR and GMB. So roll it all up. We believe it's your best opportunity to get some money. What they have to do, in my opinion, is they have to give you enough grant to cover at least the additional costs that you're going to incur by all their strings, right? And to be better than the bond market. And that's typically what they've done. Their typical modus operandi is to give you some fund, some loan, a large loan. They may give you a full amount of loan here. But their rates were not going to be that good when you had all the strings in them.
Amortization period, the repayment period's the big deal.
Yeah. And what they'll do is to flip the leverage, they'll give you a grant. And it should be at least equal to or better than what those extra costs with the strings are associated with it. So you'll have another opportunity to weigh in on that once they say, okay, here's our counteroffer. And so you'll have that opportunity to accept or reject their grant and loan proposal and decide which direction you want to go. Probably, well, the ultimate decision will spring 2024, but you'll probably get some good ideas sometime this spring or summer.
So it's not this coming budget, but the budget after.
Yeah. So that's it. We're moving forward unless we're going to hear the.
It's not like we have an option.
No, I don't think, there's too much momentum. There's going to be a pushback. It's going to take a while for the actual MCL. They propose, then a year later it becomes final, but in between that year time.
There's back and forth.
They're back and forth. They're negotiating with.
Yeah, what'll happen is
Litigation probably, and.
they'll issue their MCLs, their limits, right? And then the business side, the water operators, the utility companies, the towns and cities impacted will be on one side saying it's too low. All the environmental groups, who are very well funded, will be on the other side saying you're killing us. It's way too high. And so they'll be back and forth. Whoever loses will likely litigate. But at the end of the day, we have two options. Do it or basically turn the water operating license over to the state and say, here, have at it, and then you're still going to have water, you're still going to have the cost, and it's going to be a lot probably more draconian than we might be able to do for ourselves. So, and interesting part about this, I've learned, you run for public office, right? And then you learn about a water system and, all the things that go to running a police department. But PFOA or PFOS weren't mentioned until 2020? They weren't?
Well, that's when they came to us for the first mentioning, but it's been in the industry for 5 years, 10 years.
Yeah, well, I gave a graphic before, it goes back to the 90s.
Yeah, but now they've said they're going to regulate it, and that discussion didn't start until 2020, right, at these levels.
2021 is when they issued their first LHA.
Yep. And the other thing I learned about it is there's a Clean Water Drinking Act that was passed in the 70s, 60s?
1970.
Thanks. And
That's the Clean Water Act. The Drinking Water Act was a little later.
okay.
76, I think.
But part of that deal is that they encourage the regulatory agencies to find new contaminants as they go. So here's one example.
Those jobs they're creating for all the.
Well, and the costs they're creating for the people who consume. There's got to be that balance, and right now, maybe a little out of whack.
Not too late for the town to put a couple bucks on the Mega Millions tonight.
Well, we already donated $1,000.
I'm hoping you win it, and out of the goodness of your heart, you can throw some our way.
You can get, I guarantee it.
All right. Is there any, that's a lot. Any questions?
Oh, my.
So, I've listened to Larry I don't know how many times now, and then every single time I just sit there and shake my head. But we're working the best we can on it, and we want to minimize the impact. We want to get, we're going to hopefully get a decent grant. We're going to take some of the money that we already got from the American Rescue Plan, put it toward this. And then part of, the rate on a bond is one thing, but the repayment period is the other thing, right? With the pipe out on Main Street, we don't have to pay that back we're paying that back over a 50-year period because that pipe lasts for 75 years. We hope. That's what the other pipe lasted. Here, we're talking pipe, we're talking equipment. The pipe's going to last for a really long time. That equipment that goes in those pump houses, it's a much shorter life. So that repayment, therefore, increases the cost. But we'll try to stretch that out as long as reasonably possible as well to minimize the impact on everybody. But that's where we are. So,
Thanks,
sorry to
Larry.
end it on a down note. Okay, Cub Scouts, that was a lot to listen to. Give me one thing you learned tonight. Give me your name and one thing you learned tonight. Stand up.
Mr. Gabriel.
My name is Gabriel Malvo, and one thing I learned tonight is I don't know.
Nothing? Nothing strikes your fancy? We don't make a lot of money to do this job? Okay. Thank you. Next one.
My name is Chaswick, and I learned a lot about the water stuff.
The water system? Very good.
I'm Juliana Helton, and I learned a lot about the water system as well.
Okay. All right, Boy Scouts. Who wants to go first? Everybody's got a shot.
My name is Wayden Noah, and I learned that some people's time is not worth the
Thanks, Wayne.
Yeah, you're never going to live that one down. Who's next? Everybody goes. You got to earn that badge. You learned about the water system. Okay. You want to be more specific, feel free. And all the way in the back.
My name is Ben Schiller, and I learned that there's actually a lot more to do with the wells and water than just it goes in your house and you drink it.
Amen. You got it right. Good lesson.
Good job.
Well done.
My name is James Guzman, and I learned about how there's a lot more chemicals in the water than I often knew.
Yep. Well done.
My name is Brian Brown, and I learned about how, like, the process of water cleaning.
Yep.
My name is Nolan Blizzard, and I learned that cops use GPS to find out where to go.
So they do, especially in Hampstead. You want to follow up? See, you came on a very good night that a lot of our meetings aren't as significant with this much information. So you guys, you've got the full house, the full Nelson, if you will, of information tonight.
I forgot to mention one thing.
How can it get worse?
No,
Oh, sorry.
I've got right now about 1.2 billion of infrastructure work in motion. And so I work with a lot of big clients, doing a lot of big work. And it's just been a pleasure to work with Kevin and Toby and Tom and Tammy. You got a great staff. They're really easy and good to work with. They're diligent. And all this work we've done in such a short time has been possible without that.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Larry.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Hayes.
Mr. Hentz works on like Baltimore City problem size things, and we also have him living in Hampstead, so he helps us out a little bit. Anybody else? Public comments? Going once, twice, three times? All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Come on, we can't go home till you do this. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you all, and thank you all for hanging out with us on Carroll County Cable Television as well.